Every once in a while, the world sees an incredible shift in technology. You just knew that everything was going to change. Right now, we're having one of them shifts.
Every year, we have almost 60 million visits to our help site. And from that, about 2 million cases are created.
Being that Salesforce is so big, no one can be expected to know every little detail.
We have a knowledge article here, we have a chat support over there, and it was kind of limited.
Customers struggle to find the right piece of content in a timely manner.
How can we enable more customers to be successful on the help portal?
The help site with Agentforce really is the forefront.
People want instant gratification today, and so they want an instant answer. Agentforce built on the help site really has all the content of the knowledge articles and everything else that I need to solve my problem.
And it allows us to quickly get the right piece of content, the right answer to the customer the first time.
And what was days is now minutes. We're looking at an issue where a customer is attempting to add users to the sandbox access, but those users are not getting the email. We're going to come to the homepage and we're going to ask our question. And so behind the scenes, Agentforce is working to understand what is it that they're asking me. They're asking me about a sandbox. They're asking me about a reset email. And Agentforce is able to pivot seamlessly from an issue resolution motion, high complexity, a list of steps, right into education. But let's say this still isn't clear to me. I have a follow-up question. Well, this adds in another layer of complexity. Agentforce, ahead of having to wait to talk to a human, can actually solve this question for a customer. Being able to understand who is this person, what might their goals be, and how might they want to be communicated with are all things Agentforce can leverage to provide a better experience.
Usually I'm having to read through 4 or 5 posts on the community page to figure out the right answer. With this, I don't have to weed through anything. That is a game changer when you're up against so many deadlines. Now you can really tell how much I use this.
But let's say this isn't making sense to me. I still want to talk to a human. Those humans are still just a click away. And that's the magic of this experience, is that there is no loss for the customer. That context is captured. That is essentially handing the baton to our support engineers. There's a deep partnership there that really emphasizes what AI is incredibly good at and what humans excel at. We free up our support engineers to work more complex cases and provide that uniquely human touch.
I can have that answer immediately. And when it can't solve it, I still get to talk to that person if I need to. If I would have had that 10 years ago, I think my career would be in a whole different place.
And what we're seeing is over time, our resolution rate is increasing. We're seeing about an 82% resolution rate now. And our escalation rate, which is customers going from Agentforce to a human, it's gone to 1%.
The first week, we saw a mere 244 conversations, and now Agentforce is handling over 50,000 conversations a week for us.
The combination of humans with AI really gives us the opportunity for combined intelligence. It's kind of like Salesforce's new superpower.
We're now going to have this digital workforce that augments our human workforce, and it's exactly what AI was meant to be.
All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed that opening video. If you didn't attend our last webinar in January, this gives you a little bit of background information on what the customer success team at Salesforce has been very busy with over the last 6 months. My name is Lucy McClellan from the customer success team here at Salesforce, and welcome to our second session on the Agentforce Customer Zero story, Behind the Build, Deploying Agentforce on Help.Salesforce.com. First off, thank you all so much for being here and taking the time out of your busy day to learn about the largest Agentforce implementation in the world. Super quick reminder before we get started, Salesforce is a publicly traded company, so any purchasing decisions you make should be based on what's available today. Now, let me introduce you to the leaders of this Agentforce transformation at Salesforce. We have Jim Roth, President of Salesforce Customer Success, and Bernard Slowey, SVP of Digital Customer Success. Both Jim and Bernard have been working incredibly hard over the last 6 months to bring to life what we call the Agentforce Customer Zero. Jim, could you please tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure, Lucy. I'm super excited to be here. I'm a Chicago transplant living in Austin, Texas, coming to you live from Austin today. Interestingly, I've got 4 kids with 2 birthdays, and maybe the most interesting thing recently, I'm now officially an Agent Blazer. So really excited about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. And Bernard, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I feel bad I didn't wear my Agent Blazer hoodie. Jim outdid me today. Hi, everybody. Really excited to be here today. My name is Bernard Slowey, as Lucy said. I live in Davison, just outside Charlotte, in North Carolina, which is famous for where Steph Curry went to college. You can probably tell by the accent, I'm not a North Carolinian native. I'm from Dublin, Ireland, married to an amazing wife, Laura, and I got a little 8-year-old boy, Dylan, who keeps me busy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're so honored to have you both with us here today. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Jim, to walk us through the Salesforce customer service journey.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lucy. I'm super excited again for this session. I want to start us out with a poll. So hopefully everybody can see the poll on their screen. And we'll give it a few minutes for people to answer the question. What stage is your company in its AI journey? Lots of folks are well underway. Some are just getting started. Some are just thinking about it. So I want to get a feel for kind of where people are on their journey in the audience today. We'll let this sit for just a second, and then we'll see what the results say. So maybe 10 more seconds. Okay, let's see. So let's see what the mix is. Planning, the majority are in planning. We've got some in launching, some that haven't started, and some that are building. And so the biggest is in planning. That's super interesting. So a pretty good mix on today's call. We've got one more question we're going to do, which is about the types of AI use cases that people are exploring, really thinking about internal versus external. And I talk to customers a lot. Some say, hey, I want to start with internal because it's lower risk. Some say I want to start external because that's where all the impact can be. And some are doing both. So let's see where our audience is today on this. And then we'll get into it. Okay, let's see. Oh, wow, look at that. That's a change from the last one of these we did. 77.5% at internal and external. That is great to see. I'm really encouraged because the last time we did this, most people were starting internal. That just tells me people are feeling more comfortable like going after that external use case, which is kind of what we're going to talk about today, our external use case. And we actually decided to start that way, telling our customers it's a new incremental channel because we thought we could have the most impact for our customers with that external use case. So I want to set this up today by talking about this era we're in, this era that we call agent service. Every 30 years, there's a technology disruption that comes into service that dramatically disrupts service in every industry. Certainly, face-to-face service has been around since the beginning of time, but in the 60s, we entered the era of teleservice, which was the dawn of the call center. And now looking back, that doesn't seem like a big transformation, but at the time it was led us into 24/7 service. There was no such thing as 24/7 service before the advent of the ACD to distribute calls in the call center. And it really helped companies lower their costs to serve, but it also provided a much better reactive experience for customers. Even though I know nobody woke up today hoping to call a call center at the time, and even today, it still is a much better experience than if businesses were only open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. In the 90s, we entered the era of self-service with the dawn of the internet, and that was certainly a game changer. Most of us probably prefer self-service when we're dealing with a company versus calling that call center and going through the IVR. And this was certainly a game changer, again, further lowering the cost to serve and improving that reactive experience even further. But this era we're in now that started in this decade is another disruptive phase. And it's disruptive for the same reasons those past ones were. It's going to lower the cost to serve and provide a better reactive experience. But one thing that's quite different with agent service, we believe it's also going to deliver a better proactive experience. And I know service leaders that are out there, we're all trying to figure out how to deliver better proactive service and do more self-service at the same time. That's what we've been chasing for the last few decades. So let's talk about why we built Agentforce on Help.Salesforce.com. That's really the focus of today's session. So let's go back and look at what our portal looked like last September. We announced Agentforce at Dreamforce, but last September, prior to our launch in October, this was what our portal looked like. And it's a pretty traditional help portal. Lots of companies have these in every industry all around the world. And there's search and you can browse to content, but there's an awful lot of content. It's kind of hard to find things if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. And the experience just isn't that great. And so this was the reason, this was the opportunity we saw with Agentforce to deploy that as a brand new channel on our help portal to really deliver a better experience, an experience that's easier and an experience that's more expert for our customers. So we launched Agentforce on the help portal. This is what it looks like today with this full screen experience. We actually launched that in December. We've had over 400,000 conversations to date. In fact, we'll talk about this later, but you can scroll down to the bottom of the page and see the cumulative count of conversations we've had since that launch in October. You saw the video with Emily and Bernard as the stars talking about the resolution rate. We're going to click into the resolution rate and answer some of the questions you might have on how do we define resolution rate, how are we thinking about it, and how do we improve it. But this was the experience, and it's changed the way we think about our customer experience. It's not just a portal where you can browse. This is a way to engage, to answer questions, and to help customers in a conversational way around the clock. So now I'm going to turn over to Bernard, who's going to share how we built Agentforce on Help.Salesforce.com. So Bernard, over to you.
Think about when a new employee joins a company. What do? You give them data, you give them content, you train them so that they can upskill in their role and start to perform in their role. And that's exactly what we did with Agentforce. Agentforce was our new digital employee. And what we did was we took the power of Data Cloud. We used something called Data Cloud 1, which is remote data cloud, and we hydrated all of our content that existed on the help portal, our English content on the help portal, because today it's available in English only. So what you can see is today, it has access to our knowledge articles, our release notes, and our help docs that live on the help portal. So we created the foundation for Agentforce by setting up Data Cloud with that content. The next thing is we needed to go build the agent. So how do we do that? So we went to Agent Builder. And we spent a lot of time in Agent Builder defining the topics and actions that would build Help.com Agentforce on Help, And in total, if you look at this is an actual screenshot of our production environment. We have 7 topics that powers Agentforce. And I'm not going to go through all of these topics in detail, but one I do want to talk about a little bit is something called the global instructions. We spend a lot of time here because this defines the world that Agentforce lives in. You teach it that it's part of Salesforce. You teach it the voice and brand, etc. you want to speak it in. You can set guardrails of things you might not want it to talk about. So maybe you don't want it to answer questions on your CEO, as an example. You do all of this inside the global instructions. The other thing we did was also in here, we created a topic called case creation. And this is the ability for Agentforce to create a case. So we have that experience Jim talked about, it going from the agent to our human support engineer, our incredible human support engineers. And inside that case creation topic, there's 3 actions. One of the actions, make sure the customer is authenticated. So we make sure we log them in. We know who they are. They have the ability to submit a case. The second action gathers the required information from the customer for us to know where we should send that case. And then the third action submits the case for Agentforce on behalf of the customer. So in total, think about this for a minute, right? This is our production environment, Agentforce running on our help portal. We have 7 topics and 8 actions. And think about that. Think about the scale of Salesforce, right? A massive B2B enterprise, hundreds of products, and we have 7 topics and 8 actions that powers that whole experience. It's that simplicity that makes it so incredible. And also you can see you're writing this in English. You're not coding. You're writing this in natural language, writing these prompts in natural language, which is really, really incredible. So wanted to show you kind of just simply how it works, and then we'll get into a little bit more about it. So what I want to do is I'm going to talk about this flow at the top, which is a product question. So a customer asks, how do I customize an object? What you can see happens there is we now go over to Data Cloud using something called a retriever. And Data Cloud is now searching and summarizing based on the content it has, what is the relevant answer for it to come back with. And now what you see is over on the right-hand side, Agentforce responds through something called the knowledge action. So it's able to take all of that content that exists in Data Cloud. We're able to get the right answer and come back to the customer with that question. And also you can see down the bottom, the talk to a human. If you wanted, you can start that conversation straight away with, I want to talk to a human, I want to talk to a support engineer, whatever you might write. And that's when we bring in that case creation action so that you can see how that flows through as well. So we went live, as Jim mentioned, we went live in October and we started to get feedback. And even though we had tested extensively internally, I was super nervous about going live because it was going out into the public. We were going to see what it would come back with. And so what we saw was we got some very good feedback and we also got some not so good feedback. There was times when Agentforce wasn't doing a great job. And what we learned pretty quickly there is agents are not a one and done. We had to spend a lot of time inside that agent builder readjusting our prompts and making sure it was responding for better scenarios. One example I'll give you in this is we updated our global instructions not to talk about competitors. A customer asked a question, how do I integrate a competitor software with Salesforce? What did Agentforce do? It didn't respond, not because it didn't have content, because we had given it specific guardrails to not talk about competitors. So here was a huge aha moment for us in the world of agents. We started, instead of telling Agentforce what to do, we coached it. We went back to them global instructions and we told it, you are a support engineer. Your job is to always act in Salesforce's best interest. That small change was the massive unlock. Agentforce was now knew what to do in them scenarios and started working straight away. So that was a huge, huge learning for us. Another learning for us, we quickly saw customers were asking questions related to developer type questions and Agentforce was not doing a good job. So what we were able to do is we were able to use Data Cloud, again, coming back to that unlock of Data Cloud, and we were able to take all of our content that exists on the developer portal, that's actually a separate portal in the Help portal, and hydrate that into Data Cloud. And around the same time, we added Tableau docs, MuleSoft docs, Slack docs, which Slack, as an example, is a separate portal again. And this is where Data Cloud is a big unlock for us because it gives Agentforce access to all of that information. And so we now saw that it was responding much better on developer-related questions. And if you ask it a question related to Slack, it's able to answer that question because it has access to that Slack content. Now, we're still only getting started. And I saw my friend Andrew Russo has joined the call. And we had a conversation, myself with Jim and Andrew. And we said, Andrew, what would it take? Because he told us I use ChatGPT. I said, what would it take for you to switch over from ChatGPT to Agentforce? And he said, well, you guys have all of this data about me. If you personalize the experience, ChatGPT could never do that. And so what we're starting to do now this month is we're taking something called structured data. So we're leveraging the C360 where we can start to use structured data in the responses that we give back. So we can see things like the products that you're using and tailor our response to that. Interestingly enough, a lot of questions we see today, customers ask it things like, who is my account executive? What is the status of my support ticket? They're answers that Agentforce will be able to give in the future with structured data. So we think this is when it's going to get super powerful, is we're bringing that structured data together with our unstructured data, all of the documentation. And so we're starting that journey this month, and you're going to see us light up more and more scenarios where we're leveraging the power of the structured data that Salesforce has. So we're really, really excited about that. All right, so the other question I get asked a lot, and I see some questions already coming in on it, is how do we measure success? And so we think about this in three ways. The first thing that we look at is we look at user engagement. How many people are engaging with Agentforce? So of the people that are coming onto our help portal, how many are actually clicking on Agentforce or asking a question in that full screen experience? So how can we do a better job there? How can we drive more people to want to use Agentforce? Performance is really, really important for us. We look at things like latency. How fast is it coming back with its answer? And I'm going to share all of this in a minute. I'll show you its scorecard. So that's something that we continue to work on, is how do we get the latency faster? And then probably most important is customer outcomes. Are they being successful with Agentforce? When they ask us a question, is it giving them the right answer? And is it a good experience? Is it a great experience when they engage with Agentforce? That's the type of things that we look at. So let me show you a little bit of this on how we think about it. So this is our scorecard that we use to manage our business. Myself and Jim look at this every Monday to see how it performed on the previous week. And you'll see a couple of things. Since launch, we're averaging about 32,000 conversations a week. Sometimes we spike to over 50,000. We're averaging about 30,000, 32,000 a week now. We've also scaled a lot in our resolution rate. You can see we started off, it was around, I think it was around 56, 58, and we're now up to 84 resolution rate. And how we measure that, because I saw that question come true, and this is generally how the industry has measured this, is we look at customer came in, asked us a question, Agentforce responded, and they went away. Then we know that's not a perfect metric. So I'm going to talk about something else we're doing right now, which is giving us a better gauge on resolution. We now have, if you look at this metric under resolution rate, something called customer confirmed resolution. And what this is now in the flow of Agentforce, in the conversation, we're asking you, did we solve your problem? Yes or no? And you can see that customer confirmed resolution, since we implemented this in early February, it was about 59%, and it's now up to 74%. And that feels like a much truer metric to us of like, we're asking the customer the question and they're coming back and telling us. So let me just walk you through a little bit more on this just to explain it to you. So you can see on March 8th, we had 1.1 million Help Portal sessions. The conversation rate is the amount of people that engage with Agentforce. So you can see we had that nearly 32,000 conversations. I mentioned latency is really important to us. We measure the median latency, the 90 percentile. So we're looking at that, how fast is it coming back with an answer? Abandonment rate is customers who engage with Agentforce but don't ask it a question. So we're measuring that. They're initiating it, but they're not asking a question. How can we improve that? I mentioned resolution rate. You can see them as well. And then another very important metric to us is escalation rate. What that means is a customer went from Agentforce through to a human support engineer. And you can see we're averaging around 3% there. We went to 4% last week, and we feel like that's a pretty decent metric of customers who need to go from Agentforce into the human. But then we also have a CSAT question. So we're measuring the experience of Agentforce in there as well. And you can see that's 4.1 out of 5. And we measure the funnel the whole way through. So we measure the experience of our support engineers when you go through Agentforce into a support engineer. And this is the data that we're continuing to look at. We're continuing to hone in on to try and improve the experience. And what I would also say is we want to make sure we're sharing this with all of you. So if you go to Help.Salesforce.com, you'll see down the bottom, we're now showing how many Agentforce conversations has happened, how many support requests we're getting to our humans. And you can click on that Here's How link, and it will bring you to our Customer Zero page. In that Customer Zero page, you'll see lots of information, blogs from Jim, etc. But you also see our metrics, because we believe to build trust, you have to have transparency. And so we share all of our metrics so that you can go look at that and see how it's performing. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, we're only getting started. And I want to hand over to Jim a little bit to talk about where we're kind of going and some of our other learnings. So back to you, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Bernard. Let's get into the things that we've learned. There's certainly been a lot, and Bernard referenced a lot of them. This is really a summary of kind of how we think about the learnings. And like Bernard described, the first part of our journey was loading up the agent with a bunch of unstructured data to make the agent smart. We loaded up content and knowledge articles and developer docs, and we kept adding to that as we realized we needed to add more and more content to make the brain smarter and smarter. And this is the same journey we hear from our customers, this whole knowledge cycle of loading up that content, and we have to curate it too. We found issues with our content. We found content gaps we had where we didn't have content on certain questions, and we're filling those gaps. We also found, this is a new favorite word of mine, content collisions, which is when content is in conflict from each other. We found scenarios where we had named things years ago. We had a name for an aspect of our product, and then 10 years later, we called something else that same name, and that causes content collision. So we've had to go in and dedupe that, EOL some content. And like Bernard said, this is never done. Of course, we have to measure the quality of responses. And so this is really the knowledge cycle And this is kind of intuitive. You think about building out agents, and this is kind of what you'd have to go do. And we've been on this journey since we started back in September. But what we didn't realize until January is the right side of this side, the service cycle. One way to think about this is the left side of this, the knowledge cycle, is that agents need a brain, but agents also need to serve. They need to be smart and they need to serve, just like your humans delivering service. So another way to think about this is that agents need a brain, but they also need a heart. And that is really key. And this was a key learning for us, and we didn't realize this until January. I really wish, Bernard and I talk about this a lot, I wish we had known this back in October, because it would have caused us to change how we think about the experience and designed service. So what do I really mean by that? Well, there's a few learnings here in what we call the service cycle of agents. First of all, you always want your agents to be backed by humans, meaning there's always a path to get to a human, so no dead-end agents. And you saw on the scorecard kind of how we track that. Another aspect of this is you really want to design these prompts with empathy, just like you would train a human. So let me give you an example of that. Customers come to our help site and they type in something like, I'm having a Salesforce outage. That is a really significant moment for our customers. In fact, we believe that an outage, that outage scenario, is the most important moment in the entire journey that a customer has with Salesforce. Now, thankfully, we've got a really good engineering team. That doesn't happen very often, thank goodness. But when it does happen, we've got to show up, and it really matters how we show up. In fact, to our humans, we train them explicitly on how to respond when a customer comes in with one of those outage scenarios. And what you don't want to do is be wooden or robotic and just say something like, please authenticate, which is kind of a traditional bot-like experience you might deliver. Instead, what you really want to do is first start with an apology. I am so sorry to hear that you're having a service disruption. And then what you want to do is dial up some empathy. I can only imagine how impactful that is to your organization. And third, you want to signal urgency. I'm going to get you to someone that can help you, a live human, right away. That's how you want to show up in that moment. Now, the good news is that LLMs are quite good at picking up on those keywords like business disruption and outage, service interruption, all of those types of things. But you have to explicitly design that into your experience. So we're now working through a framework of what are all of the different service interactions and the moments that really matter, and how do we go design those into the experience. Now, Bernard said another trick here is you want to personalize those experiences so customers don't have to repeat information. Personalization is really about delivering a better service experience. Again, on the left side, you can have agents that deliver the factually correct answer. But the right side of this cycle is really about how do you make your customers feel? And we all know this, right? This is what great service is all about. But we have to think about this like onboarding a new employee and less like this is implementing enterprise software. Of course, there is an implementation aspect to this where you have to, again, load up all the content. But when you train an employee, you're going to train that employee on all of the knowledge they need to deliver service, but you're also going to train that employee on the soft skills to deliver a great experience. Again, your humans need to be smart and serve, and so do your digital agents. That's really the key. The other things we're working on going forward are we want our agents to be able to take actions for users. So it's great if you come into the agent and ask, how do I reset my password? We can certainly list out those 5 steps. But where we want to go in the future is to be able to say things like, would you like me to do that for you? Right? So it's one thing just to regurgitate an answer. It's another thing to regurgitate the answer and offer to do it for the customer. That's where this is going. Great service is going to mean agents that can take action. And then the last piece of the service cycle is around recommendations. So at the end of every service interaction, even with humans, there's often a refrain that ends the conversation of, is there anything else I can help you with? Which is sometimes just a throwaway comment. Sometimes customers kind of want something else. But we found in service, and I know you see this too, is it's hard to get a hold of customers. It's hard to be proactive with customers. And one of the big reasons is because it's hard to get a hold of them, because customers, whether they're businesses or consumers, they're busy just like all of us. And so if you were to call one of us in the middle of the day, it's not that likely that you're just going to pick up the call because you weren't doing anything. People are busy. And so one of the great things that we're working on is to be able to make a recommendation at the end of a service interaction. So what does that look like? Well, maybe we see in our telemetry data that there's a really valuable feature of Service Cloud that this user or this customer is not using. And maybe it's such a valuable feature that the vast, vast majority of our customers use that feature, and maybe it only takes 10 minutes to implement. So at the end of that service interaction, rather than just saying, is there anything I can help you with, which we will still do, we should also point out and make a service recommendation, which says something like, I noticed you're not using this feature, like escalation rules in Service Cloud. That's a really valuable feature. Would you like me to talk to you about it? It's actually a feature you could implement and go live within 10 minutes. That is a really valuable moment. Now, if we were to send out emails to customers on that same kind of campaign, we could do that, but we might not get the response. We've got the customer on the line. Let's use that as a moment to make a recommendation. Another way to think about this is kind of like the service equivalent of the cross-sell or upsell in sales. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. So again, agents need to serve and they need to be smart. Make sure the agents you build have a brain, but they also have a heart. That almost rhymed, I thought. Maybe it did. We'll see. Okay, so the last slide, and get those questions ready. I see them pouring in, which is great. I want to give you a glimpse into kind of where we're going on our roadmap for the year. So Bernard did a great job covering all the things we're thinking about with personalization. And personalization is about delivering a better service experience, and it's also about the ability to answer lookup types of questions. You know, what products from Salesforce do I have? What's my renewal date? Those are all things that are pretty easy for us to regurgitate, but it wasn't on our radar when we started. We thought this was a unstructured data play, and it turns out you need both unstructured data and structured data in the brain to deliver great service. So we're just scratching the surface there. We're going to start coming out with these use cases here later this month, and we're super excited about it. Next big one I'm just going to highlight is language expansion. Today, our agent experience and our human live chat experience are only in English. And our aspiration is to deliver service real-time, 24/7 in over 50 languages. That's the stake I've put in the ground with the team to say, why can't we do this in 50 languages? Now, when you think about doing that, the LLMs are going to play a critical role there. So first of all, we need to know the answer to the question or to have the conversation. And then we need to translate that through the agent. But we talked earlier about escalation rate, which is that ability to pass to a human. And so what we don't want to do is imagine we're working with a customer through the agent, the digital agent in Portuguese. And the customer needs to escalate to a human. What we don't want is the scenario where we tell the customer, well, we've been working with you in Portuguese through Agentforce, but now we have to pass you to a human who can only work with you in English. That's not the experience we want. So we're working on an end-to-end translation capability so we can translate the agent part of the conversation into over 50 languages, and then in real time, pass customers to a human who can also converse in 50 languages. Now, we're not going to hire people that speak all 50 languages and know all of our products. We would never get the budget to go do that. That's not even feasible because a lot of the times those people would be sitting there idle. So that's not going to work. But through the power of Gen AI and translations, we can actually do this. So we can have humans that are typing in English, and the real-time translation will allow those answers to be delivered in Portuguese, delivering an end-to-end experience in all of these languages. Now, it's funny, I think about this a bit because we've all kind of taught the world that the language of IT is English. But if you think about it, all of those customers of ours all over the world that we've forced to deal with us in English, they don't go home at night and speak to their families in English necessarily. They have native languages that they use. And so we want to bring that to the service experience we deliver so people can work with us in whatever they're most comfortable with, whatever their preferred language is. That's what we're going to do. And here's the meta point on this. A lot of times with agents and Agentforce, companies are attracted to the dollar signs. They see dollar signs and they see cost to take out. And while that is certainly true, there is an ability to scale costs. I want you to remember that agents are not just about cost takeout. They're about better experience and reduced cost or scaled costs. And this language thing is a great example because we would never, ever, ever be able to deliver in 50 languages without this technology. And so that is a remarkably better experience. It will also help us scale costs, but it is not an either or, it is a both. And that is why this agent service era that I talked about on the first slide is so profound, because it only happens about every 30 years that technology lands in our lap and is going to allow us to both scale costs and deliver a better experience at the same time. And that is the key point. The last one I'm going to highlight on this roadmap is Agentforce Voice. That's coming later this year. And we think about that in a few ways. First of all, we think about Agentforce Voice replacing our phone IVR that you can get when you call 1-800-Salesforce. And that is profound in and of itself, because gone are the days of phone menus and press 6 for this or 2 for this. That's going away. And if you've listened to any of the demos of Agentforce Voice or seen some of these things, the conversational capabilities are unbelievable. It is natural language, it is conversational. And so we believe that those agents are going to be able to help customers resolve issues as well. And the best part is it's all built on the same actions. It's the same Agentforce under the hood. This is not a different tech stack. It's not a different agent for voice. It's the same agent. So it's going to be very easy for us to take all these learnings, both the knowledge cycle and the service cycle, deliver great service. And we're going to be able to do it in a written digital chat channel or in a voice channel. That's coming later this year. The other piece that we get excited about, and I talked earlier about the ability for Agentforce to help us deliver proactive service, is the ability to make outbound voice calls. So go back to that scenario where we saw something in the telemetry and we wanted to make that service recommendation at the end of the session. Well, we certainly want to do that, but there might be examples where we want to pick up the phone and call a customer and point out the same thing. Hey, here's this feature. We think you should be using it. It would drive a ton of value for you. And the best news is you've already paid for it. So let us teach you how to use this feature that's already in what you paid, and that is going to deliver more value. And so we're really excited to be able to do that. And again, imagine being able to do that in 50 languages. That is an amazing experience. And so these are a couple of the big things we're working on. As Bernard said, we are never done on this journey. We are so excited, and we are so excited to be here today to share all of our learnings with you, because we hope in some way it might inspire you to build a better and better agent experience for your users, either internal or external, as we saw in the earlier poll. So on that note, I think I'm going to pull Lucy back in, and we're going to get going with some of the questions. So Lucy, you ready?
I absolutely am. That was just incredible, Jim and Bernard. It was insightful, it was inspirational. Thank you so much for the transparency. I'm sure tons of questions have been coming through from the audience. So let's open up for Q&A. If you haven't done so already, audience, please go ahead and submit your questions through the Q&A box in your interface. So let's see what the first question is. So question number 1 for Bernard. Is Data Cloud mandatory for using Agentforce, or can alternatives such as existing data lake or external file repositories be leveraged as content sources? I'd also love to know if Agentforce can gather information from private files.
Today, we are leveraging Data Cloud as our implementation. There is, Jim will keep me honest on this as well, there is other options that customers can do. But for us right now, it's Data Cloud is how we have it implemented.
Yeah, I mean, you can get started with an agent using the knowledge object in Service Cloud as an example. But I think everybody will start to realize, just like we did, that the types of data and the scope of data that you're going to want in an agent to really deliver for your customers is going to be broader than your knowledge articles. There's going to be other content, other unstructured data that you want to deliver, and as we kind of talked about a lot on personalization, you're going to want structured data as well. So that can't all live in the knowledge object, and so it's certainly a good way to get started. But I think you're all going to want to look at Data Cloud as that option to really deliver a data mesh to pull in that data from across certainly other Salesforce systems, but your enterprise.
Yeah, and as Jim said, you could get started, but if you want to get to that point that you're able to use like structured data, unstructured data that's maybe across different sources in your company, Data Cloud is a massive unlock there.
Great, thank you both. Actually, question number 2 ties in quite nicely with question number 1. So you both spoke a little bit about structured and unstructured data. So with more structured and unstructured data coming in, what do you anticipate will happen to the escalation rate? This is for Jim, but either can answer, of course.
Yeah, this is a good one. Bernard and I, we talk about this one a lot of what should the escalation rate be. You saw in the fancy Hollywood film starring Bernard that at that time, the escalation rate was only 1%. And you saw in the scorecard, it's now up to 4%. We actually thought when it was 1%, that was a little bit too low. We're not in the business of deflection. That's not why we have Agentforce. We're not in the business of trying to make it painful for customers to get to humans. We want to make that really easy for customers if they need to get to a human. So we consciously wanted to drift the escalation rate up. Now, this question talks about when we bring in more and more data, what's it going to do? An interesting thing we've observed, this is kind of an interesting learning, humans will ask questions of digital agents that they would never ask of humans. And I'm not quite sure, there's probably psychological research that'll be done on this topic in the coming years, but maybe there's less friction. Maybe it's people are less embarrassed, but they're asking questions. We're seeing them ask our agent questions that they've never opened up cases to ask our call center agents. It's these questions we reference like, hey, which products from Salesforce do I own? Who's my customer success manager? What are the renewal dates? What's the date of Dreamforce? Questions like that. Hey, I heard there's a Salesforce event in New York coming up. Can you tell me more about that? These are the types of questions we're getting. And they, I don't know. I think it's just people, when they have a good experience with an agent, they're going to ask more questions. So I think what we're going to see, the escalation rate, I think, might drift up a little bit more for now. And then as we mature, it might drift back down. But I think what's really happening is the total number of conversations we have with customers in Salesforce speak, if you measured that as the sum of conversations plus cases, I think that is going up. So the number of assisted interactions we have with people, whether that's delivered by digital agents or humans, will increase because people like this conversational interface and they're willing to have more dialogue and engagement with it. It's certainly far more engaging than just searching Google or searching on our website to find an answer and having to browse through a list of links to get the answer.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. And I feel like really ties back to the focus on customer experience, not just traditional KPIs like escalation rates. So thank you for that answer. Going back to Bernard. Bernard, we received this question from your friend, Andrew Russo. What is the delta from the escalation rate to resolution rate? What is the 12% called?
The 12% is the abandon. And it's a really interesting, myself and Jim chat through this a lot. So our Agentforce experience on the Help portal, if you go to Help.Salesforce.com, you get a full screen experience. And there is no abandon in that experience because you ask it a question and go. If you land in one of our knowledge articles or, a content page on the Help portal, you'll see an Ask Agentforce in the bottom right-hand corner. What we see sometimes is customers initiate Agentforce. So they click the link to Ask Agentforce, it opens up, but they don't ask it a question. So we consider that an abandon. Now, we think that will go away over time because we're going to bring more and more into the full screen experience. Like we don't like the UX right now, kind of being a small experience on the right-hand side. Jim pushes us hard on this one. And so we're working very closely with our product team that it's going to come together as a full screen experience. So I opened up Agentforce, but I didn't ask it a question. Is that 12%?
Great.
And what we've talked about, the evolution of that might be that maybe abandons in the future is not just they click in it to engage and they don't ask an initial question, but it might be if they don't ever respond, like we ask it a question as part of the conversation and they disappear. And maybe they disappeared because their internet connection dropped or whatever reason, but maybe that is the new definition of abandon. So we're thinking about, can we design the current abandons out of the experience, and then can we get more granular with what is a true abandon?
Yeah, I feel like we're going to iterate over these metrics over time, Jim, right? We're learning a lot from what we had, like customer confirmed resolution is one that we brought in because we didn't feel great about that resolution. So we'll continue to iterate and learn. I feel like we're blazing the trail here with in this agent world.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that our team is not afraid to learn and to adjust and iterate. So thank you for that clarification. Going back to Jim for our next question. How, with our own agents we build, can we see the performance of the agent so we know it's working efficiently or not? Where can we see those metrics?
Yeah, it's a great question. The dashboard that or the scorecard that Bernard showed we had to build, that was not in the product out of the box. But our product team, we have a great partnership with them. They really do treat us like customer zero, and a lot of the roadmap comes from what we've learned. And so we're working with them now to say, how can we get some of these metrics to be out of the box, right? A good example that I know is top of mind for everybody is the latency, like how fast is the agent? And so we had to build kind of a script to go ping our agent and get those metrics ourselves. That is coming in the product soon, where the product is going to be able to have a dashboard for latency and the distribution of latency, which we refer to as the 90th percentile. That's coming in the product. So I would say today, the metrics you kind of have to build yourself. Some of them are, in Service Cloud, like the escalation rate we measure because we can see volume coming through tagged as coming from Agentforce. And so some of it is based on Service Cloud. Some of it is certainly in Agentforce. But certainly it's up to you to build them. And if you have ideas or you see things or you're building things, we love to collaborate on this metrics question. So please ping me or Bernard, and we'd love to have a conversation around metrics and how you're thinking about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim. Going back to Bernard for our next question from the audience, really good to see you've introduced customer confirm resolution. A lot of thanks to you, Bernard, for that. Can you talk us through how you continually adapt based on negative feedback to tweak the overall experience?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So one of the things we want to do is empower all of our Salesforce employees to help make the experience better. And what do I mean by that is we have incredible support engineers at Salesforce that are very knowledgeable in their products. So what we actually do is ones where we were given, a negative rating. So if you say, when we ask the question, did we resolve your question, yes or no? If they say no, we make sure we get them over to a human support engineer. Then what we do is with our support engineers, we're reviewing them transcripts, right, to see what should Agentforce have done differently? What would a support engineer do? We're doing that manually today, but we're also using like an AI LLM where we can look at things that had negative sentiment and see, can we improve that as well? And that's something that's available in the Agentforce Testing Center. So it's about using our support engineers to help improve the quality of the agent's answer.
Amazing. Love that we are using AI to improve our Agentforce experience. Going back to question for Jim here. This is a great one, and I think top of mind for a lot of the folks in the planning phase. Can you describe the life cycle of the implementation?
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting journey. We debated a lot early on of should we launch an agent internally, like to help our support engineers be more productive versus external. And we decided we wanted to start it external for a number of reasons. But then there's this question of kind of how do you introduce something that's kind of new and maybe unknown and risky? Bernard talked about the anxiety we were feeling before we launched. How do you do that when you've got an existing set of channels, an existing set of customers to go do that? And so what we decided to do was think about launching Agentforce as a new incremental channel. I think this is really a key point. This will help you and your organization get over the anxiety of, I can't do customer facing, I can only do internal facing agents. Now in the poll, a lot of you are doing both, which is great, but I know some of you have had anxiety around how can I turn this on for customers, this autonomous thing? What if it hallucinates? What if it makes a mistake? All those things. And so what I would tell you is set it up as an incremental channel, be very clear, hey, this is a new incremental channel. And your early adopters will embrace it and give you feedback, and that's great. And also remember, humans aren't perfect either. So your humans that are delivering service today, they make mistakes too. So it's okay if your digital agent makes mistakes. The key is about getting better. We talk a lot on our team about we want to be really good at getting better, and that absolutely applies here to Agentforce. So we turned it on as an incremental channel, and then as we started to see more positive results, the resolution rate got better, all the metrics started getting better, we started putting more and more volume through it by cutting volume over. The big thing we're now facing in full transparency is we have a lot of customers that have bookmarked the case submission form. And we tried to point some of that volume over to the agent. It didn't go very well, so we kind of had to unwind that. So we're now thinking about how do we continue to make the Agentforce experience better so that customers want to adopt. We want to make Agentforce the best channel, and so it becomes a no-brainer for people to go adopt it. But we're also going to start retiring some of the old channels, and so we're going to move to a model where Agentforce becomes the front end of the experience, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be better than that case submission form, which we've been tuning for 3 or 4 years, and is pretty good today, but we think Agentforce can be better. So that's the journey. So really the life cycle frame is start it as an incremental channel, position it as an experiment. As you start to get the volume through it and make the quality better, then start folding your other volume through the agent.
Great, thank you, Jim. Yeah, I think it really ties back to showing that it's always a work in progress and we're always getting better. Going back to Bernard for our next question, this is a really interesting one. Can Agentforce complete an action? For example, Travel Agentforce makes a recommendation, and then can they complete a booking if the customer wants it to?
It's such a great question. And Jim kind of hinted about this when he talked earlier on about the password reset example. Yes, Agentforce can take action. We want to enable scenarios where it will do that. We got to work through that structured data first and start to give it access to that structured data. And then we want to get to the place that it can do actions on your behalf. Now, with things we need to work through there, obviously you need to be authenticated, you need to be logged in, and there's stuff on the org, etc. But that's our goal, is that Agentforce can start to do things on your behalf. And that's when it will become even more powerful.
That is going to be so exciting once we can get to that phase. I know we're all looking forward to it. Really great Q&A session so far. We actually have time for one more question, and this will be for both Bernard and for Jim. Someone asked whether Agentforce is only available on Help.Salesforce.com. I believe the answer is yes for now, but could you both share any other places where we might see Agentforce showing up?
Yeah, it's a good one. There's actually 2 places externally where you can see it. One is help.salesforce.com. We've talked a lot about that, obviously, on this webinar. The other place, if you just go to salesforce.com, that is a second Agentforce agent that is external to our customers. You can go play with that. And under the hood, architecturally, what's going on there is the way Salesforce runs our Salesforce architecture is we have one org for service and a second org for sales. So we run Service Cloud effectively in one org and Sales Cloud in the other. And the current Agentforce architecture is tied to an org. And so what that means is that we have a sales agent and a service agent, that those are the 2 that you'll see on those sites. Now, we recognize this is not really what you want. What you really want as a customer is you want to have one agent with many capabilities. You don't want to have multiple agents that kind of bleed into the experience so your customers feel your architecture, or worse, your org chart. And so there's a lot of work going on with our product team to say, how do we deliver kind of one agent experience, even if we have all these different capabilities and functions behind the scenes? So more to come on that one, but that's something that we're working on, is to kind of, we don't want it to just be, to feel like it's tied to the org footprint of the customer. Bernard, jump in there and add anything I missed on that.
No, I think you summarized it perfectly, Jim. And we even in Jim's world of customer success is today we feel like we've kind of lit up one persona, the support agent. But we see a future where we're going to light up like a success manager agent, like that could help you with onboarding, a renewals agent. But all of this would still live under Agentforce. I would still be managing one agent. It would be able to talk to other agents in the back end. And that's what Jim was hinting at, is imagine it can also talk to the sales agent. So no matter where I land on Salesforce properties, I'm dealing with Agentforce. And it's an army of agents behind that are tailored to whatever problem, whatever question, whatever need I have. That's where we're trying to get to.
And maybe not just on Salesforce properties, but in Salesforce products. Think about
exactly.
That. So
yeah,
that's where this is all going.
Amazing. Thank you both for answering that last question. I know everyone on the webinar today is very excited to hear about our next steps in our journey together. But we want to really thank you, everyone, for your time, for attending today. If you have any follow-up questions or need information, please don't hesitate to reach out to your Salesforce team, to the folks on the webinar today. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, where we will dive into how we've continued to iterate on this transformation based on more insights that will come in the months ahead. So have a great day, everyone, and see you next time at our next webinar.